At the company's launch party, the new CEO said, "Everything you see here is thanks to our amazing team, minus the dead weight we let go." Everyone raised a glass. I stood up, handed him a document and said, "Here's your surprise launch gift." Then I walked out. 10 minutes later, complete chaos. 12 years. That's how long I'd given to that company. 12 years of late nights, early mornings, and weekends lost to strategy meetings and product deadlines. So when I saw the subject line, "Organizational Restructuring, Please Confirm Meeting," my heart didn't skip a beat. It slowed, just enough for me to know something wasn't right. The meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. sharp, a Wednesday, just 3 days before the company's highly publicized launch party, one I had spent the last 9 months orchestrating down to the smallest detail. I walked into the conference room exactly on time. The atmosphere was thick with pretense. Kevin from HR sat to the left, fake sympathy practically dripping from his pores. Across from him sat Andrew Harper, the freshly appointed CEO who had taken over 6 weeks ago. No history with the company, no loyalty to its people, just sharp suits, LinkedIn buzzwords, and a plan to optimize performance. "Isabel, thanks for coming in," Andrew said, folding his hands on the table like he was about to offer me a promotion, not a pink slip. I smiled politely and sat down. "Of course, we'll get straight to it," Kevin began. "In line with our new structural alignment, your role as Director of Brand Strategy is being phased out. The executive team appreciates your years of dedication, but the decision is final." Andrew didn't blink. He just added, "You've been a valuable contributor, Isabel, but we're building a leaner, more agile team." Valuable, leaner, phased out. I glanced at the termination papers Kevin slid across the table. 12 years distilled into 3 printed pages, a severance that barely acknowledged my time or value. I could have cried, could have raised my voice, demanded an explanation, but I didn't because I already knew this was coming. 3 weeks earlier, I had walked into the office late one night after forgetting my laptop. That's when I saw it, an open email on Andrew's screen. He'd left in a hurry. The subject line read, "Isabel off the launch list. Replacement confirmed." I only needed a few seconds to read enough. It was dated a full month before any restructuring was announced, so I began preparing quietly, carefully, strategically. "I understand," I said now, my voice calm. "These decisions are never easy." They seemed almost disappointed by my composure, as if they were hoping for an outburst to make their job easier. Instead, I signed the papers, thanked them for their time, and stood to leave. "Oh, one more thing," Kevin said. "Per policy, your final day will be Friday. You won't need to attend the launch party." I almost laughed. Won't need to attend? I had built the launch from scratch, designed every invite, curated the guest list, and even booked the venue myself. And now, 3 days before, they were uninviting me for my own event? I nodded. Understood. But I had no intention of missing it. Back at my apartment that night, I opened my laptop and looked over the document I'd been refining ever since I saw that email. It wasn't just a resignation letter or a legal complaint. It was a timeline. A chronologically ordered list of every campaign, product, and brand milestone that I had led or built from the ground up. Each entry included names, proof, file backups, and emails. And at the bottom of that document, a copyright certificate. Because 9 months ago, when the launch theme was still an idea on a whiteboard, I had pitched something bold, a new branding language, tagline, and visual system for the product. They loved it until Andrew took over and stopped inviting me to creative meetings. What they didn't realize? I had filed for copyright of the full launch identity under my own name as the original creator on personal time using my own tools, legal, clean, traceable. I saved the document as a PDF titled launchgiftisabel.pdf and attached it to a scheduled email. The recipient, Andrew Harper. Delivery time? 9:30 p.m., precisely 20 minutes after his toast at the launch party. I smiled to myself as I hit schedule. Let them have their champagne, their applause, their hollow words, because I wasn't just walking out. I was going to make sure they remembered me. By Thursday morning, the office buzzed with launch party energy. Florists delivering centerpieces, interns rushing around with gift bags, and marketing leads reviewing press kits for the 200-plus guests expected to attend. TechVision's rebrand was about to go live, and the buzzword of the week was transformative. No one looked twice at me. That was the beauty of being invisible after they've decided you're already gone. I still had access to the internal comm system, the project management dashboards, everything. They hadn't revoked a thing. Andrew didn't even bother speaking to me again. He was too busy being photographed for business magazines, flanked by people half my age and twice as loud. Every time I walked past the glass conference rooms where they gathered, I saw my work, my branding, my copy, my entire concept splashed across the screens like it had been conjured from the heavens. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was patient. Thursday afternoon, I received an email from the event coordinator confirming the final guest list and media rundown. I hadn't been removed from the CC list yet. Sloppy. Scrolling through, I saw the names of dozens of industry leaders, influencers, and investors, people who remembered me as the voice behind TechVision's most successful campaigns, people who would definitely recognize my signature creative style when they saw it unveiled. But most importantly, I saw the name of Lucas Bain, founder of Bain & Ford, the largest investment firm tied to TechVision's future funding. Lucas was a serious man with little patience for legal drama or intellectual property scandals. I had met him twice at industry conferences. Once, years ago, he'd pulled me aside to compliment a campaign I developed. "You've got the kind of mind that makes people pay attention," he'd said. Now I'd make sure he had every reason to. That night, I reviewed the launch schedule. Andrew was set to give his toast at 9:10 p.m., followed by the unveiling of the new branding on a massive screen that wrapped around the room. 9:30 p.m. was the moment everything would change. The document I'd prepared, LaunchGift-Isabel.pdf, was more than just a list. It was a dossier. It outlined the development of TechVision's new visual identity, traced to meetings that occurred before my dismissal, backed by time-stamped drafts and Slack messages where I proposed the key ideas. It included the copyright registration filed 4 days before Andrew even joined the company. It also referenced internal messages where Andrew dismissed my role as a creative we can afford to lose. The best part, it wasn't sent just to him. The scheduled email was set to deliver simultaneously to TechVision's board of directors, Lucas Bain, 3 top-tier tech journalists, and my own lawyer, Samantha Cho, who had drafted a cease and desist letter attached to the file. I had also scheduled a LinkedIn post to go live at 9:35 p.m., summarizing my 12 years at TechVision and my decision to protect my work after being dismissed. Not bitter, not petty, just factual, respectful, and backed by proof. Friday morning arrived. I dressed carefully in a black satin blouse and tailored suit. Understated, but sharp. My access badge still worked, and no one questioned me as I walked through the front lobby of the upscale Midtown Hotel hosting the party. I blended in easily, just another executive among executives. Champagne glasses clinked. Waiters floated past with truffle canapés. Guests posed against branded backdrops I had designed. It was surreal. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. At exactly 9:09 p.m., Andrew climbed the stage with the confidence of a man who thought he had built his kingdom from scratch. Spotlights warmed his face as he raised his glass. "Everything you see here," he began, voice booming, "is thanks to our incredible team. Every sleepless night, every innovation, every ounce of creativity, well, except for the dead weight we let go along the way." The crowd chuckled uneasily. Some glanced at me. Others raised their glasses with artificial smiles. I stood up, walked calmly to the stage, and handed him a thin white envelope. He faltered. "What's this?" I leaned in, voice just loud enough to be picked up by nearby microphones. "Your surprise launch gift." Then I turned, walked out of the ballroom, and left them with the countdown ticking. At 9:30 p.m., the notifications began. Emails were delivered. Phones started buzzing. One journalist tweeted a screenshot of the copyright certificate. By 9:32 p.m., Lucas Bain was already dialing his phone. 10 minutes later, chaos erupted. By the time I reached the sidewalk outside the hotel, I could already feel the shift in the air. Inside, the music was still playing, the waiters still circulating, but the mood had turned. The moment my email landed, it tore through the launch like a silent missile. Polite in tone, legal in wording, but devastating in impact. What had been a celebration was now unraveling in real time. I didn't look back. Instead, I slid into a black car waiting across the street. The driver, sent by Samantha, my attorney, nodded silently and pulled away. My phone lit up as we crossed Park Avenue. 10:02 p.m. "Samantha, everything's moving. Bain is furious. Board's already calling an emergency session." Beautiful timing. I stared out the window as the city glowed around me, my thoughts drifting back to the beginning, back to when TechVision wasn't even called that. It was a scrappy startup, and I was one of the first 10 employees. We'd worked out of a co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and cheap ambition. I remembered our founder, Daniel Shaw. He was the reason I stayed as long as I did. He believed in people. He listened. He made sure credit was given where it was earned. He passed away 4 years ago. And after that, the company changed. Andrew Harper came in with shiny teeth, perfect suits, and a string of buzzword-laced TED Talks. The board thought he was the future. I was just a reminder of the past. They never expected the past to fight back. 10:11 p.m. "Miguel, what did you do?" Andrew just stormed off stage. "PR team is in panic mode. Investors are demanding answers." Miguel had been one of my allies in the marketing team. Quiet, sharp, and loyal. I hadn't told him everything, but I had warned him something big was coming. 10:14 p.m., LinkedIn. Your post has received 3,258 reactions and 987 comments in 44 minutes. I opened it and read some of the top responses. This is why we document everything. Well done, Isabel. 12 years of brilliance dismissed. You deserved better. This is the kind of quiet strength we should all aspire to. The validation felt surreal. After years of being told to tone it down and let the team shine, I was finally being seen. Not for the politics I avoided, but for the work I had done. Back at the hotel, the fallout deepened. Samantha forwarded me a recording from a contact inside the boardroom. One of the assistants had left their phone recording on the table by accident. The audio was scratchy, but the voices were clear. Board member: did no one verify the branding ownership before tonight? Legal counsel: we were told all assets were developed in-house. Lucas Bain: you're launching a product using copyrighted material you don't even own. You expect us to keep funding this mess? Andrew: we can handle this. She doesn't want to fight. And then came Samantha's voice. Cool, razor sharp, cutting through the room like a scalpel. Samantha recorded: actually, she does. If you don't retract your branding materials and halt rollout by Monday, we file an injunction. By 11 p.m., TechVision's legal team had reached out to Samantha directly. They wanted to discuss options, but it was too late for damage control. The launch had already turned into a case study in corporate arrogance. Friday, 7:45 a.m. The headlines were everywhere. Launch party goes off script, CEO slammed for IP scandal. Tech Insider: branding crisis at TechVision. Former director files copyright claim. Daily Tech Digest: woman fired days before launch shuts down entire rollout. Voxwire: TechVision stock dropped 6% before the market even officially opened. Meanwhile, my inbox was flooding. Recruiters, journalists, startups, old colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years. One message stood out. A personal note from Daniel Shaw's widow, Claire. Subject: he'd be proud of you. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone like it weighed 100 pounds. That simple sentence brought the tears I hadn't let fall during the meeting, the dismissal, or even the walkout. Because beneath all the strategy and planning, the legal protections and public posts, there was something deeper. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. By Monday morning, TechVision was in full damage control. The launch campaign, once scheduled to dominate tech headlines all week, was frozen. Their website had quietly reverted to the previous version. The new tagline, visual identity, and promotional assets were scrubbed clean. Social media channels posted vague messages about unexpected technical issues, while their PR team scrambled to respond to the growing avalanche of press inquiries. At 9:12 a.m., I received an email from a new name, Derek Lomax, the board-appointed crisis manager. Dear Ms. Turner, we respectfully request a meeting to explore options for resolution, including potential licensing or settlement of the disputed intellectual property. Please let us know your availability this week. Regards, Derek Lomax, Interim Vice President Strategy, TechVision. I forwarded the email to Samantha, who replied within minutes. Let 'em sweat. We'll respond tomorrow. You have more pressing things today. Are you ready? I was. At 10 a.m., I walked into the Midtown offices of Verotech, a rising AI firm that had been quietly gaining attention in our industry. A week ago, they had reached out, not just because of the scandal, but because they recognized the voice behind TechVision's most iconic work. I was offered a full creative leadership role, Vice President of Brand Strategy and Innovation, Equity, full autonomy, and a team I could build from scratch. But the real draw? Their CEO, Aisha Rahman, had once been dismissed from a Fortune 500 company for being too bold. She understood. Our meeting began with no pleasantries, just a handshake and a simple phrase from Aisha. You are brilliant. Let's make sure you get to keep being brilliant. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't defending my worth. I was defining it. After lunch, Samantha and I finally reviewed the terms we would propose to TechVision. They had two options. 1. Cease all use of the launch materials immediately, issue a public retraction, and pay damages. 2. License the materials retroactively and moving forward under my ownership for a significant sum and with public acknowledgement of my role. The second option was generous, all things considered. But we both knew Andrew Harper's ego would choke on the words public acknowledgement, which is exactly why we included it. By Tuesday morning, TechVision's board had gathered for another emergency session. An inside source leaked part of the meeting's discussion to Tech Insider. Their article, posted by noon, was damning. According to sources, CEO Andrew Harper failed to properly vet ownership of the company's new branding assets, leading to a public copyright dispute just hours after the product launch. Shareholders have expressed concern over Harper's handling of the situation and the potential legal costs now facing the company. The article didn't mention me by name, but it didn't have to. Everyone already knew. 10:43 a.m. Miguel. Andrew just got booted from today's strategy call. Board is furious. Rumor is he's being reassigned. 10:55 a.m. LinkedIn DM from Lucas Bain. Let me know when you're ready to talk. I think you've earned more than a new title. I didn't answer yet. I wasn't finished watching it all unfold. By Wednesday, TechVision released an official statement, finally acknowledging oversights in the development and attribution of creative materials related to the recent product launch. My name was mentioned formally this time. A line buried at the bottom read, "We are currently working toward a resolution with Miss Isabel Turner and her legal team." It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. That afternoon, Aisha and I finalized my contract with Virotech. When the HR director asked if I wanted to post a formal hiring announcement right away, I smiled and said, "Let's wait until Friday." Because Friday marked exactly 1 week since the launch party, 1 week since Andrew raised a glass and called me deadweight, and I had one more surprise in store. Friday morning dawned bright, cool, and full of promise. Exactly 1 week since I'd stood in front of a room full of executives and handed Andrew Harper a gift he never saw coming. I arrived at Virotech's headquarters in my new role as Vice President of Brand Strategy and Innovation. The office was already humming with energy. Designers whiteboarding product concepts, marketers refining campaign timelines, engineers discussing rollout plans. It was a stark contrast to TechVision's culture of top-down orders and approval bottlenecks. Here, people moved with purpose, with respect. I set my bag down in my new office, larger than my old one, but less about status and more about space to think, and opened my laptop. Right on schedule, our carefully crafted announcement post went live on LinkedIn and across business media platforms. Virotech welcomes Isabel Turner as Vice President of Brand Strategy and Innovation. The post was polished but personal. It highlighted my 12-year track record at TechVision, credited me for leading their most successful campaigns, and announced the beginning of a new chapter, one rooted in transparency, collaboration, and visionary work. The final line read, "Because innovation deserves not just recognition, but protection." Within 30 minutes, it was trending. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of supportive comments from former colleagues, fellow creatives, even a few old rivals who couldn't help but tip their hats. 9:34 a.m. Samantha, their general counsel just called. They're ready to accept the licensing terms, including public attribution. Andrew officially stepped down this morning. Interim CEO is Richard Donovan. I leaned back in my chair, letting that settle. It had taken 7 days. 7 days to dismantle 12 years of being underestimated. 7 days to reclaim ownership of my work. 7 days for a company that once called me replaceable to admit on paper that they couldn't move forward without what I'd created. By mid-morning, tech media outlets had picked up the Virotech announcement. One particularly biting headline from TechScoop made me laugh out loud. From deadweight to director, Isabel Turner's launch week power play. I sent the link to Miguel, who responded within seconds. Miguel, officially turned in my resignation today, starting with Virotech on Monday. You were right. They never saw it coming. He wasn't alone. 2 other former team members from TechVision had reached out that week, asking if Virotech had openings. It did, and I was already working on integrating them into a project I'd been dreaming about for years, but never had the support to pursue. The very people who had been ignored, underpaid, and overlooked were now building something new with me, not beneath me. At 12:15 p.m., a formal email arrived from TechVision's interim CEO, Richard Donovan. It was professional, dignified, and most importantly, respectful. Dear Ms. Turner, I want to personally thank you for engaging with us during this challenging moment. On behalf of the board, I apologize for how your contributions were handled in the past. We have agreed to your licensing terms and will issue a public acknowledgement this afternoon. We've also initiated internal reviews to prevent this from happening again. I hope this resolution offers closure and that your next chapter is filled with the recognition you've always deserved. Attached to the email was the draft of TechVision's public statement. They were acknowledging me by name, stating clearly that the creative direction for the original launch had been developed by me prior to my dismissal, that the company regretted failing to recognize my work and was now licensing the branding through my ownership. It was everything I had asked for and more. Not because I wanted applause, because I wanted truth. At 3 p.m., the statement went live. Investors reacted favorably. Stability returned to their stock, but the internet had already chosen its hero, and it wasn't the guy who once toasted to letting go of deadweight. That evening, Aisha stopped by my office with 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne. "To justice served," she said, pouring. I raised my glass, and to starting over stronger. As the sun dipped behind the skyline and our glasses clinked, I knew something deep in my bones. This wasn't just a win. It was a shift in how women in leadership are seen, in how intellectual work is valued, and in how silence is sometimes the loudest response of all. And yet, I still wasn't done. Because a victory is just a moment. What you do after is what makes it matter. 1 year later, I stood backstage at the National Women in Tech Leadership Summit, adjusting the microphone pinned to my collar. The host's voice echoed through the hall as she introduced me. Please welcome our keynote speaker, industry trailblazer, brand architect, and a voice for innovation with integrity, Isabel Turner. The applause was warm, familiar, deserved. I stepped into the light, past the curtain, and looked out across a sea of faces, executives, entrepreneurs, students, engineers. Some I recognized, others I didn't. But many of them knew me, knew my story, a story that had become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms and a rallying cry in break rooms. A year ago today, I began, I was packing a cardboard box, not with regrets, but with memories, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I walked them through the truth of what happened, not the headlines, not the sanitized company statements, the truth of how easily innovation is taken for granted, how loyalty is only valued when it's convenient, and how people like me, like many of them, are told to sit quietly while others take the credit. I was called deadweight, and I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew my actions would speak louder than my anger ever could. The room was silent. This isn't just a story about copyright or a clever play at a launch party. It's about owning your work, your worth, your voice. Afterward, dozens of women, some barely out of college, some with decades of experience, lined up to speak with me. One whispered, "I started documenting everything after reading your story. I didn't realize I had rights." Another said, "My company just gave me credit for a product line I built after I reminded them how your situation played out." They weren't fangirling. They were awakening. And that mattered more than anything. The next week, I returned to Virotech for our quarterly strategy session. Miguel and 3 other former Tech Vision colleagues now sat around that table with me. We were finalizing a new campaign, something bold, deeply collaborative, and entirely original. No one was trying to outshine the others. No one was pretending to have all the answers. We built together, the way it was always meant to be. That afternoon, I received a sleek envelope at the front desk. No return address. Just my name written in neat, deliberate handwriting. Inside was a short handwritten note. "Congratulations on your success. The board speaks of you with respect now. They should have from the beginning. I've resigned." You were right. It was never just business. R.D. Richard Donovan, the interim CEO who had replaced Andrew, a man who, unlike his predecessor, had chosen humility over ego. He was stepping down now that TechVision had stabilized under new leadership. Their recovery had been slow but deliberate. They'd licensed the branding package, publicly credited me in every investor document, and most recently, they had invited me to speak at their company retreat. I declined, not out of spite, but because I had finally moved on. Later that month, Aisha called me into her office at Virotech. She smiled as she handed me a single sheet of paper. "The board has approved your promotion. Effective immediately, you're now Chief Brand and Innovation Officer." I blinked. "That's exactly what you deserve," she said, standing. "You don't just build campaigns, Isabel. You build belief in people, in purpose, in what's possible." I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just breathed. Because for the first time in my career, I wasn't fighting to prove my value. I was living in it. The next day, a new nameplate appeared outside my office door. I ran my fingers across the metal letters. Isabel Turner, KBO. 12 years of being dismissed, sidelined, underestimated. And now my name was exactly where it belonged. Not in the footnotes, not behind the scenes, but on the door, on the document, on the record, where everyone could see it, where no one could take it, where it would stay.